Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today is just a stone cold legend in the metal community. Is one of the founders of thrash pioneers Overkill. He's changing directions a bit, and he's about to release his debut record with his Cadillac band. The record is called Let's Rattle. The full name of the band is D.D. Verni and the Cadillac Band. And please welcome D.D. Verni. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. And now, for those who just know you from Overkill, this ain't that, but it's fantastic. So
Well,
let's
thanks.
start at the beginning. How and when did the seeds of doing a big band record start growing for you?
Well, it's a kind of music that I always loved, even when I was a kid, so I didn't really think about doing it. Probably it started, my first daughter was born 26 years ago, almost 27 now, birthday's coming up. And I wanted to write a song for her and for my wife when she was being born. And I wasn't sure what kind of song it should be, but I wanted to do something. And so it wound up being a big band song. For whatever reason, it kind of morphed over that way. And it's actually one of the songs that's on the record, Manhattan Baby. And so that was probably the first one I did. And I kind of put that aside. And then, as you're doing Overkill records, as I do any records, I'm always putting riffs aside, putting things in different categories. And through the years, I'd gotten involved with my side band, Bronx Casket Company. And then I worked on a musical for a bunch of time. So I was trying different genres outside of Overkill and trying different music. And then, my wife's birthday came up and I wrote another song and it happened to be a big band song. And so that got put in a pile. And then my youngest daughter said, well, where's my song? So it was another song. And that went into big band pile. It just started, and I started looking at stuff, and between the seeds of stuff that I had put aside, some of the songs that I had already done, I looked and I said, I have maybe 8 or 9 songs here that I could round up, and maybe I could pull in a few standards, and I could kind of do this if I wanted to. And then COVID hit, and I had more and more time. And so it was like, all right, well, I guess it's time. So I just started pulling things together little by little, probably over the course of maybe 2 years it took maybe to do the record, to get it all done. But nothing, where there was a definitive moment. It was just kind of building through the years, little bits and pieces, until I realized I had a record.
So most of these songs have been written over the course of quite a few years. Were there any, as you were putting the record together, like, okay, let me, write another 1 or 2 to fill it out? Or was it all stuff that you already had prepared?
No, I had a few songs that were done, maybe 3, but all the rest were done specifically for this. It would be like, I had, little bits and pieces, a little verse or a little chorus or something that I had put aside. But then when I sat down and said, I'm going to do this, it was probably maybe 6, 7 songs that were written specifically in the last little bit to be part of the record.
And now it's pretty complex music, the big band sound. I mean, and you have a full complement of horns and upright bass and guitars and drums and huge backing vocals. Did you learn how to do all of the charts and integrate all of those things, or did you bring someone in to kind of show you? How did you develop it? Because it's a skill to put that together.
Yeah, the putting it together, the producer part of songwriting part of it, that I've been doing for so many years, and it's so many different levels that part of it is something I'm actually good at. But I did bring in people for all kinds of things, because I don't read music at all. I never took any lessons. I don't read charts. The whole horn world is that is a unique universe unto itself that I had to get up to speed and learn about. But really what happened, if you kind of strip away what I'm doing anyway. If you strip away all the background vocals and the horn parts and everything else, and you just get down to it, a lot of the songs are, you know, 4-chord rock and roll songs. You could strip them down to be a, you know, an old Fats Domino song, or, you know, at its core. And so that's more where kind of the song came from. When I had demoed up the song, I kind of did that. I knew I wanted the girls, the background vocal, Kingston and Greystar, the girls who sang on the record. I knew I wanted there to be a big girl background vocal kind of feeling to it. I wanted that kind of Andrews Sisters doing doo-wop, almost, if that makes any sense, feel. So I had a lot of that in place. But for the horn parts, John, who played bass on it, he also played in Setzer's band, still plays in Setzer's band for many, many years. He did all the horn arrangements on it. I sent him the demo with, you know, scratch horn parts on it, with everything from me playing the keyboard horns to humming horn parts. And he had to kind of go through it and say, all right, I see what you're talking about. And, you know, kind of put him into real language. And then we got together in the studio, and he knew a horn section. So they came in, he wound up playing bass on it and kind of coaching the horns through the horn parts. And it was just kind of building little bits and pieces that people I would pull in. He knew a piano player out in LA. I sent him the tracks, and we went back and forth, sending files back and forth to say, no, it should be a little bit more honky tonk. No, that should be a little bit more traditional, that kind of idea. But when you get kind of good players and let them kind of do their thing, if they kind of connect with the songs, you get a lot of cool stuff to pick from to kind of pull what you want.
And one of the things that's come up in a lot of interviews over the past year and a half is how making a record has changed. You're no longer in the same room because of COVID, and there's, as you mentioned, files swapping and things like that. But with something like this, where you have so many musicians, this isn't, you know, your 4-member rock band. How was it trying to integrate all of these parts? Were you able to get enough people in a room at one time to put it together?
Well, we did. I had put down a scratch vocal and a scratch guitar, and I flew out to LA, and we did all the drums, all the horns, and all the bass together. So that worked out well, especially the bass and the drums being in the same room together at the same time. And then the horns were the same thing. They were playing to live drum tracks, even though we weren't all playing together. It would have been, you know, great to say, you know what, let's just get everybody together for 2 weeks, and we'll just jam and we'll rehearse and we'll change stuff and we'll change tempos. And those, when you're working coast to coast, that's difficult to do. Even when you're local, people just have lives now and more things. It's just harder to kind of get that vibe together. So there's no replacement for getting in a room together. So as much of that as you could possibly get in, we did. But I think everybody has gotten pretty good at being able to work remotely. A lot of people who do stuff. I can remember when we first started doing it, even with Overkill. I listened back, 15 years, when we were maybe just doing demos and saying, oh, we'll just work, you know, remotely, and then we'll just get together in the studio. And you can hear that, excuse me, on the records. It's not, there's no substitute for getting together for at least some, you know. So, and you find, what did we do between the demo stage and the getting in the room stage? It's usually tempo changes and that kind of thing. So you get better at doing that remotely. So I've been pretty comfortable about working in my own place and then bringing it to other people and having a short amount of time to kind of pull it together. And like I said, when you have really good players, John is a great bass player. Tony was a great drummer. They were, you know, they were reading off charts. Especially Tony, the drummer. I flew out to LA, and there was supposed to be a different drummer and horn section. And when I landed, the drummer called and said, I got the dates screwed up. I have another gig. I'm not going to be there. And now I'm in LA, and I called John and said, what are we going to do? He said, give me an hour. He made a couple of calls, and he said, I got this guy, Tony, who also played in Setzer's band. He's available. And he's going to come in. So this is on a Friday. He shows up Saturday morning. Never heard the songs, no demos, nothing. but he had the charts in front of him, and he's a chart player. As well as other, he plays in the Doobie Brothers and does a lot of organic stuff too. And I told my wife, I said, I guess I'll know pretty quickly if this is going to fly. You know what I mean? So, and those two guys were in there. I think they probably played 30 seconds, and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. These guys are, you know, they're really good at what they do at that kind of thing. So, and not only were we able to kind of fly through the charts, we were able to try things and do changes because they're just good at it, you know?
Yeah. And I know you have one day at least scheduled with the band at the end of October in Red Bank, New Jersey. But do you see this as something you'd like to continue and take on the road, or is it something that you just need to get out of your system?
Oh, no, we're definitely planning on doing more and more and more. It's, you know, it's just fun. I have guys that I know in the business through the years that said, God, it's so much work, you know, why? And I'm like, it's just fun. It doesn't feel like work to me. It's like the people I've been working with have been great. It's fun to kind of flex different songwriting muscles. And then even now to do a show, we're about 2 months out in front of it right now. And this is a whole nother world. You know, I got 13 people in a band now. And, you know, all the charts are being redone and changing the keys and doing rehearsals with people. And I'm playing guitar and singing. And then I learned the other day, it's like, oh, well, just playing the guitar and singing in key. Oh, yeah, you have to actually remember the lyrics too. Man, I got to give singers more credit than I have through the year. Maybe I should tell Blitz, like, damn, man, it's a lot of stuff.
Give a pat on the back now.
Well, I can remember playing years ago with a band, and that the singer had a teleprompter in front of him, and I thought to myself, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. And now I'm like, you know, it's not the worst idea to see that thing kind of scrolling by a little bit. You know, there's a lot of shit going on. So yeah, I'm hoping that it can be something that kind of just continues. That you know, when we have time off from Overkill, you know, we put together a weekend of swing shows, you know, or if there's some support thing that makes sense. Or I think it could be a fun thing for festivals too. Summertime things I think could be fun. Some of the Europe festivals, there's a lot of blues festivals and jazz festivals I think it could fit on. That would be fun. So we'll, you know, my plan is to be doing it for the next while. I mean, I talked to my manager the other day, and the record is supposed to be out in a couple of weeks now, and he says, you already have ideas for the next one, don't you? I said, of course I do. Come on. I mean, you know, you're an artist, you're a recording person, that, you know, these songs I did 2 years ago. Of course, there's more thoughts, more ideas. How can you do it bigger? How can you do it better? You know, all of that.
And you know, it's been almost 40 years since Overkill started. And over that time, I mean, you did a bunch of records with Bronx Casket Company, you had your solo record. And like the Cadillac Band, each one of those, while they may have been a little closer in style to Overkill, was very different from what Overkill is. Do you enjoy that freedom of being able to come up with a new project? And as you said, flexing different songwriting muscles and doing different things, but then always having that rock of Overkill to go back to?
Oh, yeah. That, I mean, again, it's just a lot of fun. And learning is interesting. Working with new people is something that I've really enjoyed. You know, you get locked into your world of Overkill. It's like, okay, we got 5 guys in the band, you know, and maybe a producer or a mix guy that we kind of work with. And that's, you know, that's what you go to war with. That's your guys. But when you go outside and you're dealing with background vocalists, even with Bronx Casket, you know, a lot more keyboards. There was a lot of orchestrations on those records. So I was working with arrangers and orchestra people, stuff, you know, I never do outside of Overkill or with Overkill. Piano parts, horn parts. I mean, even when we did the Cadillac record, when I heard standing in the studio and heard that horn section, that's the first time in my entire career I've actually heard a live horn. Like stood in a room and heard someone play that instrument rather than, you know, a distorted guitar out of a Marshall. And then too, it makes you really appreciate the Overkill stuff too, because you do this stuff for a while and you kind of get out and try things and have fun with that. And then like we're working on a new Overkill record right now too. And I kind of put on those tracks and there is just nothing like a just crushing metal song turned up to 50, and your windows are shaking in the car, and you say to yourself, there is just nothing in the world that is like that, and then you're inspired to do that, so it's fun. It's fun to do the different things, and each time you come back to the different thing, you're inspired to do something and to jump back into it again instead of, oh, this again, for me anyway. That's it's really cool.
One thing, and I think you kind of spoke a little bit to it here by doing those outside projects, that has always been a badge of honor for Overkill is, I mean, you and Bobby, you never broke up, you never went away. The band has consistently released music for nearly 40 years now. What is it that contributes to that consistency and longevity of the band and your partnership with Blitz?
Well, part of it is just the kind of the being creative part. I'm not a person who kind of writes when the record is ready to be written. I'm writing 12 months a year. I always have a tape recorder in my pocket. I'm always scratching out ideas, is always kind of compiling things. So it's that's part of it. The other part, frankly, is just making a living. We're not one of those bands. I mean, I've said it a bunch of times, and other bands will laugh sometimes, but a number of years ago, certain bands you'd hear saying, well, it's not like the old days where you could take, 2 or 3 years off and the checks would just come in. It's like the checks aren't coming in anymore. And I would just shake my head and said, that was never in Overkill's, it was, if you didn't do a record and get back on the road, you weren't getting paid. You weren't making a living. So it was like, you have to make a record now. There's no, oh, I could use a little bit more time. Well, it's like, yeah, everybody could. It's not how it goes, and then we took some pride in that too. We kind of, would almost look at the Motorhead template and say, that's what a metal band does. There's no 5 years off. There's no first record in 7 years. It's another record, back on the road. Another record, back on the road. Keep trying to make it bigger. Keep trying to make it better. This is what we do. It's not a, a part-time gig. It's what we do full time. So, but those two things, I think, kind of just the creative part of things, and then, having to get back on, and then just liking it. I mean, right now, I was saying to somebody the other day, I said, this is the longest I've gone without doing the show since I'm probably 15. And you miss it. I miss doing shows a lot. It's just so used to doing, or seeing the guys, you know what I mean? I was like, I haven't seen Blitz in person since we got off the road. Or any of the guys in the band, really. I haven't seen any of the guys. We kind of live a little bit scattered, so you talk on the phone here and there. But that's part of the fun of being on the road. Besides doing shows and playing music is fun. We have a tight group of guys, and we have a lot of laughs. I mean, it's just like a bunch of idiot 15-year-old guys acting like jackasses, having fun. So I miss that part of things too, but hopefully that's coming up soon.
And it's been 2 years since the Wings of War came out, and I know you guys have the Atlantic Years box set that comes out in October as well for Overkill.
Right.
But any hints on when we'll be seeing new studio music from the band?
We're recording it right now. A good portion of it's done. It keeps getting moved, frankly. That, depending with the COVID situation and when we can tour. At first we thought, well, what difference does it make whether we tour now? Let's just put a record out. And then we thought, we really want to put out the music and then bring it to the people. That's the fun. It's not just putting it out and just saying, there you go. It's then being able to tour it and bring it and put it out there. So right now we have a tour set for March here in the States, and then in April and May in Europe next year. The plan is to maybe have a record with that, with both those tours. So we'll have to kind of see how that goes with the touring part and with the record part. If the record's done, maybe that makes sense to do. But if they pull the tours from us again, maybe we delay a little bit more. Maybe we don't at that point, and we say, okay, let's just move on. Not 100% sure, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it's done. We're just kind of recording, putting the finishing touches on it. I mean, it's got to be mixed and all that, but we're working on a cover right now with our artist, and so it's moving along.
Well, looking forward to it. God knows we need a new Overkill album these days, and need you guys out on the road. It's been far too long since I've had a chance to catch you. So.
Well, we do have one Overkill show too, which is nice in November. This was when we were out on the road, whatever it was, 2 years ago when COVID first hit. We were on the road, and we got in every single show on the tour except for the last show, which was a big show in New Jersey. You know, we always finish up our tours at a hometown show, and that's the day it got where they shut everything down. So we rescheduled that show a couple of times, but finally it's rescheduled, and we wind up doing the count on it. And it even says on our poster for the show, it's 609 days later. We've rescheduled the show in November. Right now, you know, it looks like it's going to be a big sold out show, and people are excited to come out. It's a one-off, so it's not a tour show, but we're really excited to just fly the guys back in, fly the crew guys back in, and at least get a taste of that again. Maybe we'll do a new song or two. I mean, who knows? Depends on how that turns out. But there is an Overkill show. I have two shows. I have a Cadillac show and an Overkill show. And within a 2-week span, it's like, oh my God, it's great.
Well, we've been spending some time here talking with Dee Verni. This new band is Dee Verni and the Cadillac Band. The record is called Let's Rattle. It's out everywhere on September 17th. It's a fun record. It's great to listen to. It's some fresh air coming in with new music. So Dee, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll catch you on the road soon with either Cadillac Band or Overkill. So thanks a lot, man.
The road sounds good to me. Let's get out there. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.